Listen, whenever I make a Pokemon video from the game's perspective, I tend to be very cynical. I tend to be very negative. I tend to be very hateful and despisatory towards this franchise, mainly because I really despise a lot of this franchise. I love the games. I have some wonderful childhood memories playing these games, and I think back on that. I think back to that year in 1998 when I first got my hands on this red version. I grabbed it. This is the red version from 1998. I grabbed this thing, brand new off the store shelves of a Toys R Us, and I played it on my big gray brick Game Boy. I don't know where that is, if I still have it. It's somewhere in storage. It'll take way too long to look for it. But you could play Gen 1 on the original Game Boy. You can eventually you would get the Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color would show different colors, obviously. Like when you're playing this, there would be like a red shade to the game. And I like what they were doing with that. I like how the Game Boy Color would add a little bit of color, a little bit of differentiation, depending upon which original Game Boy game you would play. The Game Boy Blue, the Pokemon Blue would have a blue tint to the map and all this, the characters and the sprites and all that would have a blue tint. This would have a red tint, obviously, blue and red. That's the I love those little attention tweaks to detail that they would do here. Pokemon was an absolute phenomenon. It was. The anime, obviously, going back and watching it, it's not that great. I'm just nostalgic for Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn. Those are the three I watched when I was younger. I would tune in for most of Kanto, half of Johto, and a fair bit of Hoenn. Not as much as Johto, but I did see all of Kanto. I was huge on Kanto. Whenever those little singles, the little VHS tape singles would come out, I was there to grab one. I have a huge stack of about 20, 25 Pokemon tapes, a bunch of Kanto, a couple of Johto. I had a lot of them, and I would watch them over and over and over. I was big on this thing, right? And a young me playing this in 1998, 1999, I knew nothing about the business practices, about the game mechanics, the stuff behind the scenes that would make me come to despise franchises like this and what they do to players. There are things that I despise about this franchise. And of course, I've already spoken about a fair bit of what I dislike. I'll bullet point a couple of them. One, I dislike that Mew is technically in the game's code. He is. Mew is in the game's code. If you do the Pokemon Trainer glitch, the missing no glitch, there's a certain way to do it. If you do it right, you can catch a Mew in the game without going to a Toys R Us back in the year 1998, 1999 to get your Mew put onto your cartridge. It's not necessarily put onto your cartridge, it's just unlocked. It's the Pokemon is in the game. It's in here. It's in the code. You just can't catch it. There's just no legitimate way to catch it. And they did this on purpose for exclusivity, and I despise that. I absolutely despise exclusivity. You know, exclusivity and playable characters, I would rant about this in games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. Depending upon the console you got the game on, you would get certain exclusive characters. For example, Blade, I think, was exclusive in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 for... No, Moon Man. Was it Moon Man? Moon Knight? Moon Knight. He was exclusive to something. My memory is not that. It's been a couple of years, okay? It's been a couple of years since my rants on those games. If you want to hear my rants on those games, I've already uploaded them to this channel. Go and find them. Go ahead and find them. Because future me doesn't know them. Past me, who recorded those videos, it's a little bit fresher on his mind. Either way, there were characters, depending upon which version of the PS2, the PS3, the Xbox 360, the Xbox 360 especially, would have DLC characters. It came out during a time period before the PS3 had DLC. So you got some exclusive characters in that version of Marvel Ultimate Alliance that you would never get in the PS3 version of Marvel Ultimate Alliance. And of course, there's also a character called Sentry, who was on the Game Boy Advance, or is it the DS release of Marvel Ultimate Alliance? I think it's the DS release of Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Sentry was there. He was nowhere else to be found. I dislike that. I really hate that. And I do completely understand that certain different companies worked on these games. That's how they did it back in the day when they made a licensed game. They would do a lot of cross-generations. They would make, for example, with Marvel Wolverine Origins, X-Men Origins Wolverine, the Uncaged Edition for the PS3, fantastic game. But a different company made the PS2 version. A different company made it, and it's not as good. Not as good at all. A different company made another version, I think, for the handhelds. Not as good as the PS2 even. It's even worse, right? But different companies worked on the exact same game, the exact same tie-in. They were all working off the tie-in, but working separately from one another. So obviously you would probably get different playable characters depending upon that. I did. But then, with DLC playable character practices as well, there's a game called Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit. Not Burst Limit. Battle of Z. Burst Limit is actually pretty fine. The Burst Limit is actually really good. You should play it. But Battle of Z came out right around the time that Battle of Gods came out. This game was a PS3 game, and it was one of the last ones for the system before they moved on to the PS4 with Xenoverse 2 and all that other stuff. But Battle of Z had Beerus in there as a playable character, Super Saiyan God Goku as a playable character. But there were a couple exclusives depending upon where you bought the game, and I don't think those characters are even downloadable in the PS Store. There was a character that was exclusive to buying it at Best Buy. There was a character exclusive to buying it at the GameStop. And if you bought it one place, you couldn't get the character from the other store unless you went there and bought it there too. Bought it twice just for 2 characters. And that's what Gen 1 did. Gen 1 did this. Isn't it funny how you go from one bullet point to a 5-minute rant? Amazing. But that's just what this franchise does to me. It's what this franchise does. I cannot think fondly back to it without getting irritated about the things I hated about the game when I played it later on. When I played it back in 1998 and 1999, did I know about Mew not being catchable? No, I didn't. I was blissfully ignorant. I was blissfully ignorant about the idea that you could not catch a Mew in this game legitimately. You had to either do the missing no glitch, or you had to do a Toys R Us. Go to the Toys R Us, take your cartridge to the Toys R Us, then you'll get your Mew there at the Toys R Us during a limited time event. And if you don't have a time machine, your only way of getting Mew is either through the missing no glitch, or Game Shark, or modding him in somehow or some way for some reason. That's your only other way of catching a lot of these Pokemon, And they would go ahead and continue to do this incredibly irritating thing in future generations. Gen 2, the only way to get Mew is on Gen 1. It's not in Gen 2. And then they also had their own character, the Pokemon, that was also incredibly difficult to catch, and that is Celebi. You couldn't catch it, And back in the early 2000s, the late 90s, young me, we were using a Windows 98 computer on dial-up for the 90s, right? My family didn't upgrade to those iMacs or anything like that the schools were using during the early 2000s. We had this big gray brick computer, and I didn't know that I could just go on to the archaic version of GameFAQs and maybe find answers there. I didn't do that. I found my answers from other fellow classmates on the playground when I was young, a kid in 1998-99. I had to get my cheats, my knowledge from people I physically talked to, and sometimes those people told you BS. One person said to me, you could get Celebi if you traded a Mew and a Mewtwo from a red version onto your crystal version. And you take the Mew and the Mewtwo to a daycare couple, and you have them stay at the daycare. They will eventually breed, and you'll get an egg, and from that egg would hatch Celebi. I did do this because I did end up getting that Mew. I got that Mew. I did. I only won, but I got one, and I was very happy for it. Unfortunately, I was dumb. I was very dumb. I was very, very dumb. I gave that Mew HMs. It knew Surf, it knew Fly, it knew Cut, and it knew Soft Boiled. That's it. That's all, folks. I couldn't teach it anything else without getting a Soft Boiled, and the Soft Boiled is actually pretty good. Soft Boiled is actually a good healing ability for Mew to know. He's only Chansey knew Soft Boiled, but Mew could learn it because Mew could learn anything, right? So a young me, a very dumb me, gave that Mew nothing but HMs. I wish I gave it Psychic and Flamethrower, right? So I traded that Mew and the Mewtwo that I had on this on this red version, on this very one. I traded them out of here onto the crystal version, right? And I did it. I took him to the daycare couple, and I left him there for hours and hours and hours. And then I saved my game. I turned it off, and I had given up, right? And so the years pass, right? Years pass, and I think to myself, I'm gonna try that again. I'm gonna turn it on, right? My save file's gone. The save battery died. Bye bye. No more Mew. Bye bye Mew. Oh, that hard work, that exclusive event at a Toys R Us that you can't go back to. Bye bye Mew. The save file on this red version still works though, so I can turn this on. I can go to my Pokédex, and I can scroll down to the number 151 and see that Mew is in there. It's got a Pokédex entry. It's got that little Pokeball sign showing that you caught it. And I can feel fond, enraging, frustrating memories for that memory. But of course, those are years later memories of a red version. It's hard. It's hard for me to talk about this game without getting angry. Despite having loved the first two gens because I was blissfully ignorant. It's just I have 25 years of memories of rage that came afterwards that have tainted a couple years in the earliest time periods of my fandom in the Pokemon era. It's tainted those blissful memories and turned them into cynical look-backs on something that looked good at the time, but it was only because I didn't know how bad annoying and irritating it was. You know what I would have done if I were Game Freak, if I were in charge, if I was the man in charge and any idea I said goes and the people would put it into the game? Here's what I would have done. On the yellow version, when we release the yellow version, I would add a little thing into that game. When you catch 150 Pokemon, when you complete your Pokédex, you can go to Pallet Town, talk to Professor Oak. He'll read your Pokédex and says, "Wow, you've caught 150 Pokemon. That is fantastic. Here, have a Mew. We caught this way back, and we tried to revive this fossil. And here you go. Here you go. This is a reward for getting all 150 Pokemon." I would have done that. I would have done that. Why? Because, Red and Blue would be out during the era where you had to go to the Pokemon, the Toys R Us for your little Mew there, right? But the yellow version would be the thing that we release that says, alright, our event's over, but you could still get Mew. Get it in this game. I would not be as angry. I would not be as furious. And the same thing for Gen 2, right? You release your Silver and Gold, you have your little Celebi event, this limited time event, right? You get your Celebi. Maybe that Celebi would know a specific move that makes that Celebi interesting and unique. But also, if you complete both the Kanto and Johto Pokédexes, including Mew, by the way, then Professor Oak would call you. You go to Professor Oak at Pallet Town. You go inside, And Professor Oak rates your Pokedex, and then he hands you a Celebi. He says, here, have a Celebi. In Crystal version. Have a Celebi. That would have been incredible. That would have been the way to do it. That would have been the smart way! Gen 3, same thing, right? Same thing, Gen 3. We have your Fire Red, we have your Leaf Green, right? We have your Ruby and your Sapphire, right? We have 2 more mythical Pokemon that we've added into the series, right? We've added 2 more. We've added Deoxys, and we've added Jirachi. But of course, we also have 2 other mythical Pokemon from the previous 2 gens. We can't trade Game Boy Color into Game Boy Advance. So what we would do then is use our Gen 1 cartridges for the Mew. The same thing applies in Fire Red and Leaf Green. You collect 150 Pokemon of the Kanto region, you'll get a Mew from Professor Oak, no questions asked. Or rather, he'll give you the event ticket. Professor Oak will give you the event ticket so that you can catch the Mew yourself. He'll give you that, right? And let's say in Fire Red or Leaf Green, if you collect all of the Johto Pokemon, Professor Oak will give you the ticket to go find a Ho-Oh or a Lugia. And in Ruby, Sapphire, or Emerald, if you collect all of the Johto Pokemon in that one, he'll give you a ticket to go get the Lugia. You get the Ho-Oh in the Fire Red and Leaf Green. You'll get Lugia, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Ho-Oh in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Right? You get those 2 that way. And Celebi, you'll have to collect all of Kanto and all of Johto. All of them for Fire Red and Leaf Green. Then he'll give you the Celebi that way, right? And then, of course, we have Jirachi and Deoxys. To get those, let's say you have to complete the game, right? You have to complete that, and then you go to the Battle Frontier in Emerald version. You can't do this in Ruby or Sapphire. I would say you got to go to the Battle Frontier and beat all of them. Then you'll get an event ticket to go get Deoxys. To get Jirachi, you just need to capture every Hoenn Pokemon. That's all you gotta do. That's how you'll get Jirachi, right? In regards to the Johto starters, you still have to collect every Hoenn Pokemon to get a Johto starter as well, but you only get one of those Johto starters. So it's still going to be difficult. It's still going to be challenging to get these mythic Pokemon, but I would make all of these mythic Pokemons unlockable in the cartridges, in the games themselves, the event tickets, the Pokemon, all of the code is in the cartridges. It's in there. It is in these cartridges. They're not downloaded onto your cartridge. No. The event tickets, all of the mythic Pokemon that are locked from you are in these cartridges. They're coded in here. The only thing that's blocked is this little line of hex code, right? Let's just say whatever code, blah, 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 has ticket, and then there's a blank checkbox with a 0 or a 1. 0 means you don't have it, and 1 means you do have it, right? When you go to the Toys R Us in 2004, 2005, whatever you did, if you go there and you got the little slash to their little e-reader card on your e-reader with your the little cartridge in there, then that changes that 0 from a 1. That's all it does. That's all it does. And then now that it's been changed from a 0 to a 1 in that little line of hex code, the cartridge will now know that you have the event ticket. You'll be able to go get the things that you want, the mythical Pokemon and all that stuff. It'll recognize that you got that. And, that kind of pisses me off, that it's like that. It pisses me off. I don't mind that those event tickets can still be there, because that'll be an easier way for people to collect these mythical Pokemon without doing all this other difficult stuff, because I still want to make this difficult to catch them all, but I still want to make catching them all possible. Do I make sense here? That's what I would have done if I were the mythical master of this franchise. That's what I would have done for the first 3 generations. And if that's what was actually happening in this, I would have no problems with this franchise. I would still be a little bit irritated about the extents I would have had to have gone to get everything. But I wouldn't be pissed off about it, because you could get it. See, that's the difference. You can get them legitimately. With my method, with my suggestion, you can get them. And I would be fine with that. I would. I still look back to those first 2 years. I still have memories playing this game during those first 2 years with the little gray brick Game Boy, the little green and gray color screen, lack of color screen, and the little 8-bit MIDI music coming out. It was a very memorable time for me. It really was. It was a memorable time, very, very formative years for me. And I did love this franchise once. It was after I learned that I couldn't catch Mew in here, legitimately, at all. It was after I learned that the Mew that I had was the only Mew I was ever going to have unless I did the missing no glitch, which I do know how to do. I do know how to do it. It's just, I hate that you gotta do the glitch way. I wish there was a legitimate way to play the game and unlock it. Because that young me deserves to have kept that happiness playing these games.